Good evening and welcome to your first, I think we're going to call this our first official live pod of the 2024-2025 Sky Bet Championship season. This is your Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle Life Championship season preview. We have amassed your favourite faces and voices from the Green and White family to be with you for the next 2 hours or so of your Sunday evening to discuss everything that's happened so far in pre-season, what happened yesterday at Plainmoor, and there was plenty that went on at Plainmoor yesterday, and then we'll give a good look into what's to come over the course of the next 9-10 months or so, with a little smattering of your questions thrown in. Let's get the little housekeeping out of the way. Please do remember to follow, subscribe, add all that usual shenanigans to all of our social medias. You can see little icons there on the phone on the right hand side of your screen. And do get involved in tonight's show. Do get your questions in for the panel, all your comments. You know, we all love your comments. We are going to try a little bit harder this year to keep a poker face as the comments do come in. But joining me this evening, I'm delighted to be joined. I think I've got the better three, to be honest with you. I think Aaron's sort of stitched himself up in an hour's time. But I'm delighted to be joined by Ben, John, and Graham to get our teeth into what's to come over the course of the season. But let's look back very quickly. Ben, I'll come to you first. You are our very own Thogden of the family. You were at Plainmoor yesterday to witness the 2-0 victory over Torquay United. Second half goals from Ryan Hardy, Barley Mumba. Why don't you give us your thoughts first?
Outrageous slander. I will not be having Thogden tagged to my name. I thought it was very stop start. Obviously, we know there were some health scares. I presume they were down to the heat or dehydration. It wasn't too hot, but I mean, if you've not drunk for 4 or 5 hours and you're not used to being outside, you've got an infirmity. Then, because I assume that because Torquay have put out a statement that everybody who was taken ill has recovered and not required any hospital treatment, etc., which is good news. But obviously, that there was concern and disruption because of that. Thankfully, no one other than Roberts got injured as a result of sort of like cold muscles or anything like that. I don't know what the extent of Roberts' injury was, whether that was precautionary that he was taken off. He did go into a really meaty double challenge, and I don't know if that sort of caused a bit of a ligament twang or something, maybe even more serious than that. But he was really impressive for the few minutes he was on. He seems to have possibly even grown in height, but he's definitely bulked up. He's definitely been in the gym. He had last season a very similar frame to Freddie Asaka, whereas he definitely looks more. He looks stronger, and he certainly. I thought he put himself about very well. I thought he did against Orlando Pirates too at times, and with Rooney's penchant for giving youth a chance, I think that if he isn't too badly injured, he might get a few substitute appearances this season. At least I hope so, because I've been really impressed with him so far in pre-season. The first half, probably the weaker of the two sides overall, arguably, that were put out, the 2 11s that played. I thought it looked really good, to be honest. I didn't think there was any particular weaknesses. Obviously, they were playing against Torquay, who are several divisions below, and all their players have sort of basically come in this season, and they were just learning to play together. And I thought Torquay acquitted themselves very well. But I thought it was good to see people move it. It was a very fluid. It was nominally sort of like a 4-4-2, but it sort of shaped up in the first half a bit more like a 4-3-2-1. But very quickly, the two sort of like Isaka and Wayne would either go wide as Mumba was coming up, or more frequently when the ball was with the keeper, Sorinola was going really high. And then Forshaw was dropping in to between the two centre backs. Plegwizelo was the furthest to the right, and Sorinola was right up high, and so he became almost like a pseudo centre back. And you had those four at the back with Early, and then Mumba dropped a little bit further back to pick up the ball, playing some good 1-2s with Early, and then sort of when Mumba would cut inside and invert, then Wayne and Isaka would go a little bit wider, create space for him, and also options. Then I know a few people thought that sort of Wayne and Mumba go back and connecting with each other on the left was quite fun to watch. And then in the second half, I think, especially because of having the youngsters in the middle of the park and Matthews as well on the right hand side of the defence. The shape sort of changed slightly, but more under the pressure from Torquay. But again, it was fun to watch. There was a lot of movement. It was strange. There were times when we would just smash the ball long for Hardy over the top, or maybe trying to get it through the lines, which was quite refreshing to see. But when it didn't work, and it didn't work repeatedly, the team did get the ball down and try and play it out from the back. And even in the warm up, there was about 5 minutes where Connor Hazard was literally taking the ball from one side, from the coach, and from Mike Cooper's the other side. He was taking the ball from the wing, one touch, playing it out with the opposite foot to the other, who was on the other touch line. So it was coming in one touch, out the other touch line, coming back one touch, out. So it's clearly something Wayne Rooney's training the keepers on, getting the ball out from the back, and they did recycle it very well. Again, the level of the opposition is not what we used to watch in the Championship last year, but when we saw Argyle trying to do that under Schumacher early in the season, we got caught quite a lot. I actually thought we looked quite good at it, and we have done all pre-season. Again, the context of the level of opposition is important, but it was a good watch. What we were, I think everybody, despite the stop-start nature of it, was quite nice on the eye. And if we're going to struggle this season, we certainly won't be bored doing it. I think that there's little you can kind of take from it, other than it was really good to see some players performing well. I thought Dan Scarr played really well, really assured at the centre back pass and distribution was really good. I thought that Mumba had a bit of Morgan Whittaker. He seemed really up for it, actually, because it was a pre-season game, but he really seemed to be, have some fire, which is good to see. I thought Bali Mumba, the same in the first half, looked like he'd got over some of the wobble, sort of the emotional wobble, or maybe perhaps the loss of confidence that he might have had over the second half of last season. I wouldn't, I'll let Graham maybe pick out some people for particular praise. I thought everybody did pretty well. The youngsters who came on second half didn't embarrass themselves at all. Gave the manager some thought as to whether he can work with them, etc. So I think it was a useful run out despite the disruption and the injury to Roberts. I think those were the only two downsides from the day out.
So
Yeah,
Bernard
sure.
and Matthews weren't turkeys then. What you saying?
Very good.
That is the first of many, many droll jokes that I'm sure John's going to throw in to the podcast throughout the year. For those of you who haven't already seen, I referred to Ben being our Thogden of the family. He has done a matchday vlog over on YouTube. So for the audio listeners who don't quite get the in-joke, do head over to YouTube and all the social media platforms. You can get hold of that vlog where Ben managed to get a good interview at, I think it was half-time, with a couple of Torquay fans as well on the pop side, which is a good bit of entertainment. Graham, you were there. You were a little bit closer to Wayne Rooney, I understand.
Yeah,
what can you add that Ben couldn't on the game at Torquay yesterday?
I mean, the game was totally disrupted by the medical episodes. There's no question about that. And I would question the referee's ability to time keep in the first half, because I think there was at least 20 minutes of stoppages and he played an extra 5. So the first 11, if you like, had a shorter period to show their mettle in the game. The one person that wasn't mentioned was Adam Forshaw. And I have to say, he looked very assured. He was always available, always in space, gave 1-2s. He had a really good rapport with Caleb Roberts, and it's a shame that Caleb got injured, because I agree, he's bulked up, he's tigerish in the tackle, fearless, and he was willing to take the ball from Connor and play and start the play off, and I thought that was a really impressive feature of his game, but unfortunately got injured. Other player not mentioned was Callum Wright, who was, I think we started off as a 4-4-2, and then it sort of morphed into a 4-4-1-1, where he kept dropping but picking it up, playing neat triangles. And I think our fluidity, from what I've seen this season, is vastly improved over even possibly under the Schumacher part of the season last season, certainly over the Foster bit, that goes without saying. But so I was impressed with the movement, the fluidity. Sorinola got forward and dinked a couple of good crosses. Playing out from the back, we have got more variation than we had last season. I quite like the sort of drawing them in and then hitting it long diagonal for Hardy to run on, because twice that almost worked and may surprise one or two Championship defenders. But no, I thought first half was pretty good. I expected a lot more of the second half with the players coming on, and I must give an honourable mention to Ibrahim Sissoko, who will excite and frustrate us for the season, I'm sure. I mean, watching him just warm up was a fascination. He was doing all these fancy tricks in the sort of little plays that they do. I thought, oh my God. But I think Wayne Rooney's giving him license to entertain, and we're going to be entertained by him. How long he lasts, and I don't know, because I think Torquay twice tried to take him off the pitch. I think once he ended up in the home dugout with Paul Watton, which might have come as a surprise to him. But for all these fancy tricks, he can go left or can right, and he does ping in a good cross. And the only disappointment for me was TJ, because I thought he was awesome against Cheltenham. He looked a real force and pace and power and somebody to play up to, but he barely got a look in on. And I don't quite know why that was. We never got the ball to him quickly enough, or he never got into position. But, you know, that's judgment of one game. I think he is a really good acquisition. And if we got an option to buy, that may well be a really good bit of business. But I'd like to have a word for Josh Barnard, who that was his first proper game. And I thought he acquitted himself really well in the middle of the park and did all the right things. And I noticed that Wayne went up to him afterwards and put his arm around him and gave him a lot of congratulatory support. And I think actually that's quite a feature, because there was a lot of breaks in the game. You could see him going up into individual players, pointing out things. And I did sense that the players have really bought into him as a manager, and the communication levels, understanding what he's trying to do. I mean, I know obviously Sheffield Wednesday will be the time to find out, but I felt we were a real team with a great team ethic and a lot of laughter and fun within the team, which is, you know, the team spirit seemed really, really good. And I think that's going to stand us in a very good stead for the coming season. But I mean, also like Saxon earlier, I think coming back to the player we thought he was when we saw him at Watford last season. Quite interesting that only one of the fullbacks ever went forward at one time, and there was a shuffle round in the back. So if in fact, I don't think Saxon earlier crossed the halfway line barely, but Sorinola did, and then second half Ogbeta pushed up and Jack Matthews didn't. So that was quite an interesting observation. Whether that was intentional or just happened, I don't know. But no, I think when we play Bristol Rovers, that'll be a more interesting test. But yeah, work in progress and positive, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. And we should just touch on, again, a couple of little bits of housekeeping. Obviously, we do wish those who were taken ill in yesterday's game all the very best. It does sound rather positive, the update that Torquay United provided us last night, that perhaps it was just a direct consequence of how busy the pop side was and the warm temperatures down there on the Riviera. It was a Ryan Hardy penalty on the 49th minute, and then a really good drive and run by Callum Wright and a stinging shot that the keeper did well to parry, but unfortunately only parried into the path of Barley Mumba to tuck it away. And that was all she wrote at Playmore yesterday. And yesterday, really, I know we always touch on, results are important, and Wayne certainly did in his Argyle TV interview, but actually yesterday we were just sort of the party piece there yesterday. Yesterday was very much about Torquay United and the new era that they have stepped into, and we do wish all of our friends up at Torquay all the very best for the forthcoming season, because it's great to see that they're back now as a club going forward. And yesterday really was more about them than it was Rooney and Argyle's third pre-season game of the year. John, we'll come to you. I know, obviously, neither me nor you have actually seen them in the flesh yet. We've only seen the highlights of the goals yesterday and the goals at Cheltenham. We obviously had the chance to watch Super Sports' rather interesting take on Orlando Pirates 2, Plymouth Argyle 2. What seems an age ago now. That game from a distance, with what you've heard and read from various people in group chats and online and things, what do you think's standing out in this preseason compared to recent ones, do you think?
You cut up a bit while asking the question. I think maybe it was my internet, but I think you're asking about the general preseason vibes. Yeah, as you mentioned, can you guys hear me? I think I'm frozen.
You're lagging a little bit, coming in and out of pixelation and freezing, but we can just about hear you.
Okay, let's try this. I think now might be a bit better. If not, cut me off. Yeah. So yeah, as you allude to, I haven't actually seen us play yet. I will be at MK Dons next week, which I think will also be a good challenge. Ben mentioned that Bristol Rovers will be a different type of challenge. I think MK, even though they're a League Two club, have recruited really impressively so far. They looked very good last season under Mike Williamson. They tried to play very progressive football. So, although it's a League Two team, I think that will be a higher caliber of challenge than the ones we faced so far. That being said, it seems positive, doesn't it? I mean, I think it was us who tweeted it out, maybe some others, that Orlando Pirates like a phenomenally well-matched team for us statistically in terms of the global statistical ranking of how good teams are. Take that with a pinch of salt, of course, but it seemed like we were pretty much right next to them. And so drawing 2-2 in our first game under a new manager, first game with the cobwebs being brushed away, seemed like a fairly positive result. Sadly, I could not be in Marbella with Wayne and Colleen. I would have loved to have been, but had other commitments. I was invited. It might surprise people to learn. Definitely was. No, I mean, I actually was invited. No, that seemed positive. As did obviously the results at Cheltenham, the manner of it. And then, of course, Rooney yesterday doing what Stephen Schumacher couldn't, winning a preseason friendly at Torquay ahead of a championship season. So yeah, all bodes well. I think as Ben has said about 100 times in our group chat, it's just preseason. We can't get carried away. And as funny as it is to see results like Gateshead beating Sunderland and other championship teams having embarrassing slip-ups, it doesn't necessarily mean a huge amount. I remember a couple of very funny preseason results from last season that ended up not determining how that club did once the lights were properly on whatsoever. So, don't want to obviously take the results overly seriously, but yeah, I think the vibes seem good. I think the narrative around the football world as the lower league cognoscenti start to dribble in with their table predictions and what have you over the next couple of weeks is going to be very down on us. I think we'll probably be bottom of a lot of people's championship prediction leagues or close to it. I saw that the Not the Top 20 podcast didn't even find us fit to mention in their transfer review podcast, despite mentioning seemingly every other club in the league. So I think we're going to get overlooked and I think we're going to get written off a lot. But, compared to even the beginning of the Foster era, the vibes just seem quite positive. Again, whether this will translate into the season remains to be seen. There obviously are very real and legitimate doubts about Rooney's track record in competitive football management, but I don't think you could think that things could be going too much better at this point. I think in the second half of the pod, the guys are going to discuss transfers and who we could maybe still get in, what positions need strengthening. I don't think we've had a 10 out of 10 transfer window by any means, but equally, I don't think it's been a 3 or 4 transfer window. I think it's been pretty fine by the look of it with, time and hopefully a bit of budget to go to add to the squad. And as we record, Whittaker and Cooper are still Plymouth Argyle players with different degrees of likelihood of that continuing, I would say. But I think a lot of us would probably have predicted that both of those players might have moved on in the first weeks of the transfer window, certainly by now, and they haven't. So, there is at least a chance those players will start the season with us and maybe still be here in September. So overall, I think the review card has to be pretty good. Obviously, we'll see what happens on Tuesday and next Saturday, but I think even if we lose both those games, it's not something that we need to take away as being, the end of the world, just as these wins have not been, the be all and end all either. It's all about getting through to that Sheffield Wednesday game and just hopefully having a positive mindset and going out there and playing attacking football and putting the kind of dark end of last season before the whole game to one side.
I think two things that stood out for me in Rooney's post-match interview with Argyle TV yesterday was how many times he referenced the two words Sheffield Wednesday in that post-match interview, and also his point about how last season's away form was so bad that every game in pre-season is being treated as if it was a league game. They're going through the same routine pre-match. You know, at Milton Keynes next Saturday, they'll have the opportunity to travel in the bus, stay in a hotel. They'll go through all the usual procedure and routine that they will do the week after. And I think, as Wayne says, just winning breeds that mentality. It's a very easy thing to say, but hopefully it will come to fruition at Hillsborough 2 weeks today. Let's get a name off each and every one of you then. John, I know that the name that both me and you are going to come up with is off what we've seen online. Ben and Graham have seen them in the flesh, so they're a little bit more clued up on this than us. We'll come to you first, Graham. Just give us a name from pre-season. Obviously, Freddie Asaka's plenty of plaudits. It was a wonderful bit of skill that fed the ball to Will Jenkins-Davis yesterday for the penalty. He's had a very good pre-season, but who do you want to pick out most above all else so far?
Well, actually, when I spoke, I didn't actually mention Freddie, and I should have done, because he has electric pace, and we saw snippets of it last season where he troubled defenders, and I think Wayne really likes him. He was
on the right-hand side, I understand.
Yes, he was, which is
something different.
Yeah, I thought he linked up very well with Matty Soronola. They worked it well. He can play left or right, as we know, and if he's going to do 4-4-2, he sort of fits into that. Defensively would worry me a little bit, because you're right, he looks fragile. Let's put it that way. You know, about pace. I mean, somebody told me he's the quickest player in the club, and I'm probably not surprised by that. So Freddie would be one, but I come back to Ibrahim Sissoko. I just think there's something about him that I felt every time he got the ball, I was leaning off the seat. What's he going to do? What's he going to do? And I think he's going to. I've always loved Maverick footballers, and he's right up there with the Mavericks. Even his post-match interview with his Michael Richards glasses, which was, he's full of smiles, and I just think he's got something better. I just hope if he plays against Sheffield Wednesday, he does something spectacular, and everybody goes, where they got him from? You know, that would be brilliant. So I've got high hopes for him, and I know Jimmy Dickinson particularly was really pleased to get him. So I heard. So those would be my two to watch out, and an honourable mention for third, TJ, because I think he's got something about him. The way he closed down the Cheltenham keeper, that's a pretty frightening prospect of somebody closing in on you. So those would be my three to watch out for.
Excellent. Ben, I'll come to you last. I want to come to John. John, I'm going to let you have this moment now, because I know Graham's just mentioned him, but I think it's safe to say, whilst I may be the founding member of the Lewis Gibson fan club, you are well and truly registered at Company's House in the Ibi Sissoko fan club as the chairman, aren't you?
Yeah. And that's really, again, based on vibes. Haven't seen the bloke play, but the minute I saw him come out in what Graham referred to as his Michael Richards glasses, probably the most hipster-looking footballer we've had for a while. And if Graham likes a maverick flair player, I like a sort of off-the-pitch hipster who it looks like you go around to their house and talk to them about Proust or whatever. And I don't know if that's the case with Sissoko, but he looks the part, so I'm all in on that front. And I'm very excited about him as a player as well. I was just going to say, actually, it was quite strange to me we didn't get a mention on the Not the Top 20 transfer review pod, because they identified the biggest trend in the Championship as clubs increasingly looking overseas for players who, might not be familiar to English football fans. Obviously, that really is the profile of two of our two most important signings that we've made. So it will be interesting to see if we have exploited that trend as effectively as other clubs. And obviously time will tell how those guys fit in. I guess in terms of a name, I just wanted to go for someone who, having not seen any of the games, I don't necessarily want to comment on who has performed the best, but just kind of in the abstract, I think it's fantastic to have Saxon Early back. I think he, football cliches alert, will be like a new signing in some respects for us. Obviously, by all accounts, he was absolutely excellent at Watford in that game he played for us in the Championship in a back four, I believe. Someone I sort of identified even in League One as being a player who I think in a back four has the potential to be a really excellent kind of defensive left back for us. I think I'm a little bit less convinced by the prospect of him as a wing back in a sort of back three or back five situation. But in a back four, which it seems like we're going to play, he's someone who I think has some really, really terrific attributes. And so, I think again, the guys are going to discuss this in the second half. Do we need defensive reinforcements? Early, to me, kind of does, again, cliches, does feel like a new signing in some respects. And I think is going to be hopefully an important option for us, at least, if not an important regular starter in that position.
Do continue to get your comments and questions in. Aaron is backstage producing tonight. Hopefully we'll flash up one or two of them later. I have seen that he's already starred some questions that we will come on to in the last little bit of our segment here tonight. Ben, last one from you then on pre-season. Who's the name you're going to throw out there before I give mine? So I'm really hoping that you're now not going to steal my thunder.
Okay. Well, I've really been impressed with Caleb Roberts, and obviously Freddie Asaka, who's had more minutes. He was just phenomenal yesterday. He's scaring people with his pace, cutting inside on the half turn, was just brilliant. And it's lovely that Argyle are not only developing those talents but have the potential to keep those at this level. I think that's it's just such a good thing. We love having a couple of players currently in the squad, who've come through the ranks, and every club wants that. But it's just exciting to watch players develop. It really, as well as play, everyone loves to see good players play for their club, but to be able to be part of someone's journey is quite special. I really have enjoyed seeing Mumba and Whittaker have a bit of fire and passion in pre-season. There's not really the need for them to be putting themselves about and busting a gut like they have been, but for the manager, for the club, for their own desire, they've been committed, and that's been really great to see. And I think they could both have a real big role to play. Obviously Whittaker did last season, Mumba too, to a slightly lesser degree, but I think they could be just as pivotal this season. But I've got to come back to Sissoko, and I'll come from it for a slightly different angle. I didn't actually send it through to Aaron with the videos of Dewsnip and Rooney and that, but I got the players coming off the bus yesterday on video, and you can't really tell on the video, but he does have a presence. He got off the bus and he just grabbed attention. I think, the youngsters these days, the young people, they call it an aura, but he really did. He got off the bus. He had his hood up. He had the big diamond studs. He had the fake fashion glasses, and he just. He had a presence. He had people sort of gave him space. He commanded attention without any real. And people often talk about footballers and this good arrogance. I don't think he's got an arrogance. I think he just has a supreme self-confidence. Like Graham said, when he got put into the stands, he just got up and got on with it. Not with a swagger, not like I'm fine, but just he could really. He's got that attitude. And if he can produce, like Graham said, if he can put an end product on what he's doing, the chops and everything, which were just delightful, he genuinely will be probably the most exciting player we've seen. Possibly surpass Carey, Pasaki, anyone you want to talk about. He's really got that potential, and there's certain people who do their job with just some kind of flair, artistry, magic, and he's got that kind of about him. There's some people who play a piano or they'll sing and they'll hit the notes and they'll play it perfectly, but there's others who will put themselves into it somehow. It's like, I always think the best tennis player of all time is Roger Federer, because there's just something beautiful about it. Djokovic might be better statistically, or he might have won more titles, whatever it might be, but there's just something. Sport is about beauty, is to me as much as about results and sort of put that sort of side of the game. That's why everyone's favourite players don't always tend to be the ones who put the most goals away or win the most titles, but the ones who give them the best feelings. And Ibrahim Sissoko really, he's just got that quality. He's got that X factor that you see around the really best players, best sportsmen in the world. That kind of that presence, that aura, and it's genuinely really exciting if he can add. Which was, I think, when we looked at Adam looked at the stats. His end product is that he takes the ball. Yeah, I am. It's my Olympic tennis tribute. I'm replying to Aaron Hocking's dissing of my outfit on the comments for the audio listeners. But yeah, he's really got that sort of elite sportsman kind of atmosphere around him. And if he can add the end product, which I think was what was deficient in his game from last season, then if that was Jimmy Dickinson's diamond that he sort of picked up, then he's done an absolutely sterling job then and deserves to, a pat on the back for that, because he's, he really, really looks special and could go far beyond sort of like Championship level, top, like Morgan Whittaker levels of potential.
Didn't realise we were getting David Foster Wallace on the Argyle Life podcast this season. That's a great pickup from us.
We're always looking to surprise. Just very quickly, because we have reached, we've almost reached half time here on our four's hour on the show tonight. The two I want to pick out, one of them being Caleb Roberts. Obviously, I should caveat it by saying I haven't seen them in the flesh yet, but certainly from what I saw against Orlando Pirates, I thought particularly in that period of the game where he played, I thought Caleb was really the one who caught the eye most in that game. He just looks like he's developed physically. He looks like he's come on, certainly for those little bits of experience he had last year. And let's not forget just how good a performance it was from him in tricky situation at Leeds last year in the FA Cup as well. So that experience certainly seems to have brought Caleb on. And on a similar tone to what Ben was saying about Barley Mumba and Morgan Whittaker, with the fire that they've got seemingly in their stomachs and what have you, Callum Wright as well, who's been quite influential in a number of key attacks this year so far in pre-season. It's great to see Callum. He's definitely one who's got a spring back in his step, isn't he, after the last few months that he's had at Argyle. So it's great to see Callum playing with a smile on his face, and we saw that with the second goal yesterday. So that's 30 minutes gone. Over 400 of you giving up your Sunday evening. Obviously, you're not that interested in Adam Peaty's gold medal swim in Paris. You have chosen to join us instead. Probably a shrewd choice, because there is tonight at the Olympics on after we finish. So you're not going to miss any of the key Olympic action. Do not worry. Let's move on to the season ahead then. I'm going to come out with the boring questions in about 15 minutes, but I thought I'd give you all just a couple of minutes each, really. Just after the initial shock of Rooney coming in, then the hype that came with it, the apprehension going into pre-season and what we've seen so far, just where are you sitting now on your thoughts about Argyle in the Championship? Come to you first, John.
I have incredibly mixed feelings about it, and really just think it could go one of a number of different ways, which, is a cop-out answer in the sense that that's always the case when you're asked to predict something in advance, but feels particularly true this season. I want to start by saying that when we inevitably get put bottom or second bottom of everyone's tables, that will be fair enough, in my opinion. That will reflect our budget, and it will reflect the reputation of the manager that we have hired. I think in a world in which, Oxford or Blackburn or whoever hired Wayne Rooney this summer, I would probably have them bottom. This is the reality of the league we're in, and the size of club that we currently are in that league in terms of budget and resources, and again, Rooney's reputation. So I'm not going to be turning around and saying it's desperately unfair, that whoever of Dilks and Peach or whoever have put us 24th and laughed at us. To me, that will just make it all the sweeter if we can prove them wrong. But I wouldn't, I'm not going to sit here and complain about that. I think objectively, that's probably where the smart money is. That being said, we have discussed, I think, on the Rooney appointment pod, that there are potential reasons for hope with this appointment. And I think that, or at least areas of uncertainty, right? Like, we don't know how he's going to do with the full preseason under his belt. We don't know how he's going to do with having been able to sign players. We don't know how he's going to do at a club where, there's a kind of a supportive setup, and he is not taking over a financial basket case, or a club in the MLS, or a club at Birmingham last season where he was, again, not defending his record there, but kind of set up to fail, right, a little bit, or at least, not backed for long enough to change the squad to be able to play the style of football he was hired to play. So I think there are at least some uncertainties around him, and I would say that personally that there are reasons for hope, or at least for optimism that it's not going to be a total disaster. I guess, I don't really have anything stronger than sod's law for this, but I just feel like in football, so many times you see appointments or you see signings where the initial reaction of the entire football world on Twitter or whatever is, I can't believe they've done that. That's insane. This person's terrible. And it just turns out that it works. I think that happens literally all the time. Like there are so many examples. If we go back and review our predictions for the beginning of last season, I'm sure, there were things that all of us said that turned out to be completely untrue. Clubs we thought would be really good who weren't. Clubs we thought would be really bad who weren't either. And yeah, I just think it would not surprise me at all if Rooney doesn't turn out to be a genius or anything like that. I certainly don't think we're going to be pushing automatic promotion or the playoffs or anything, but just turns out to be quietly competent. We win enough games to be fairly well clear of the relegation morass. We set our sights kind of on a more mid-table kind of area than a just above the relegation zone one. It turns out the squad's slightly better than last year, and maybe the league is slightly less good. So that translates into not just finishing 1 or 2 places higher up, but maybe 4 or 5. So yeah, again, I don't have a ton of data to base that on, because we have a manager who, again, there is rightly skepticism around, and we have players we've signed who are not really proven in English football or at this level of English football. And obviously there are still question marks over key members of the squad in terms of whether they will leave and who else we might sign. But call it intuition. I don't know. I've just got a hunch that everyone might be pleasantly surprised by the fact that we're not totally terrible. And people might also be pleasantly surprised with the league not being as cutthroat as it was last season, 51 points not being what it requires to stay up. I could see us making a 4 to 6 point advance on that and finishing 15th, 16th, something in that area, plausibly. So I think I was the most bullish last summer. I think I said we finished 16th, and that was higher than anyone else had. You know what? I'll go for that again. Why not? That's my early show.
Graham, come to you next. John referenced it there. Is it fair that seemingly all the national pundits are likely to have us either 23rd or 24th in their season previews?
Well, on last season and crowd size and available money, obviously, but I think we needed 3 things, which was height, power and pace over last season, and we've got all 3 on the recruits that we've. I think we've got experience and know-how, which married with Adam Forshaw will give us a bit more stability. I still think we're short of a couple of what I call seasoned championship players, perhaps right-hand side and centre back somewhere. If I can't. Dan Scarr did get caught out once or twice for pace earlier in the season. It would worry me. So I would be recruiting in those sort of areas. But I'm with John. I think we're 15th, 16th. We might have a little flirtation with the relegation spots. But if we start off relatively well, then confidence will build, and we'll be okay. What we don't want, of course, is losing Sheffield Wednesday, losing the first home game, and then everybody's pointing the finger, and confidence is going to dip relatively quickly, quite possibly. But what I do sense is a unity top to bottom in the club. I've seen Simon Hallett a couple of times. I saw him pre-match yesterday, and he is really confident and comfortable with the way Wayne Rooney's got in with the staff. Everybody's loves him. He treats them all equally, and same with the fans. He's been in and around Royal William Yard, the Barbican, and it's the same. And that unity of purpose will serve us well. And I think if we become, instead of Wayne Rooney's Plymouth Argyle, we become Plymouth Argyle's Wayne Rooney, then we will know that people are accepting the club as a proper championship club, and Wayne Rooney is just the manager. And that's what I would like to see. And of the bottom 3 places that we will do it.
Ben, very quickly then, before we rattle round with our predictions on league winners and playoffs and 3 teams we all think will go down. As Zach says, we can't wait for your feelings on how you feel as we reach the fortnight stage before the opening game of the season.
Yeah, I know I got a bit of a reputation as a Rooney hater. Actually, I don't have a problem with Wayne Rooney. I certainly don't hate the guy for applying for the job, and I think that everything he's done thus far has backed up all of the positive spin that came with him. For example, as Graham mentions, the man management side of things, the players seem to buy into it. They seem to listen to him, etc. The attacking front-footed, forward-thinking style of play. I think that he's brought that in attractive football. That seems to be, and identifiably his system. It's not just you can see that it's not just a very basic system. You can see he's doing good things. So I think that Rooney deserves a lot of credit for that, and that's good. I also think the recruitment has been excellent, with the caveat that I don't think it's finished necessarily yet. As Graham mentions, there's at least 2 positions I'd like to see strengthened, maybe 3. But what has been brought in, we were the smallest side on the pitch every game last season, as Graham sort of identified. And at the start of the window, before anyone came on and said we need at least a body in midfield and a body up front, so that if our main targets don't come off, at least we're not in the Coburn situation. And we did that, and then we sort of added even better as well, I think. And it should be noted that I think at least Tajani, if not Sissoko as well, directly mentioned the influence of the manager's presence, and so we have to credit the pull that he's got that managed to influence those loans. The worry is that if you listen, that a common criticism from both Derby fans and DC United fans and Birmingham fans is that Rooney isn't necessarily tactically flexible. And we sort of, not having watched a lot of Birmingham, I couldn't say, but certainly in the game against us, they were 3-1 up and didn't necessarily set up as you would expect, and allowed us back in the game to equalise. Is that going? We saw the attacking style of play thus far in pre-season. I hope, and there's no reason why not, that the manager might have learnt a bit more pragmatism, that the lessons he'll have learnt from Birmingham maybe is that, he can compromise his principles when necessary. There's this kind of narrative going around that, I think that even the owner mentioned it in his statement on Rooney, that, he was required to play a certain way. But, even after he was sacked, Rooney said that, that style of play, it was his. He was in complete unison with the board. He was determined to play that way, and his main disappointment was that he didn't get to bring in some players to strengthen that style of play. So, if he'd have gone to the board and said, "Look, we're getting absolutely pumped. I need to adjust," they probably would have allowed him. So, I hope maybe that the experience has taught him to be a bit more tactically flexible when necessary. But I certainly, I'm really behind him. Like John says, there's something about Argyle. We love being the underdog. We love being written off. And despite the fact that he is a superstar, managerially, he is written off. And I really want him to succeed, not just selfishly as an Argyle fan, but for him it would be good. He'll obviously want to move on to bigger and better things, but if we can be a successful part of the journey, great. So there's no reason why we can't do well. The problem we've got, and I know you said brief, so I'll wrap it up. The problem we've got is that there's no basket cases in the league this year, whereas last year all we really had to do was, and I know they changed manager and survived, but all we had to do was really finish above Rotherham, QPR and Wednesday, and for half the season that proved enough. As it turned out, some of those teams survived and others dropped in. Huddersfield was another one at the start of the season, looked wobbly. There aren't really many of those this season, so I think to consolidate our position again, to finish just above the dotted line, although it might not seem like progress, actually would be, because I think it would be a bigger achievement this year to survive against the caliber of teams that are in the league. So I would be quite happy to finish, and I'll be bullish and predict that. I'll be bullish and predict that we'll finish just above the dotted line and be better than 3 teams. But I don't think that will qualify as stagnation. I do think that would require progress from where we were last year, and I think it's eminently possible.
I would argue that your point about there not being any basket cases in the league, there aren't any basket cases in the league yet. So let's go around the group then. Let's get off you. What I want, I'm going to change Aaron sent me a series of questions and things to use in this hour. I'm going to tweak it just a little bit because I want to try and keep this to around about 2-3 minutes each if we can, because then we're going to get through a couple of the questions before we let Aaron and the B team in. What I want from you is the 2 teams that are going to go up automatically, a team to make the playoffs, not necessarily the playoff winners, but a team that you think will be there or thereabouts. And then your 3 teams that are going to go down. You can give a brief little synopsis to all of those points if you want. And I'm not going to come to you however once. It's just free for all. Who wants it first?
I'll go first. Leeds and West Brom, automatic. Coventry, playoff. Because actually Coventry have acquired some quite useful players on the quiet. Leeds, how they never got promoted last season is beyond me. They should have done. I think they will this time.
Is it fair to say, Graham, that only Leeds United could have found a way to not get Leeds United back into the Premier League last year?
Absolutely, but I think lessons learned. I think they will do it this year. Just the weight of their support at home and away, and they will learn lessons. They thought they were going to walk it last season, and they found out, as they did against Argyle once or twice, it's not as easy as they think, is it? So West Brom impressed me. I know it was Foster's denouement, if I can put it that way, but I thought West Brom were really well organised, proper Championship team, and I think they'll be there or thereabouts. They weren't far off. And Coventry, as I say, they recruited quite well, and how again they never got into the Premiership last season, I don't know, because they deserve to, in my view. Relegation, I think Derby are going to find it more difficult than they think. Blackburn, depends what happens with Smodics. If he goes, definite bottom three. And my surprise team, I think, would be Hull, because Rosinia's gone. I don't know, never heard of the guy they recruited, but they just seem like a team that might be on the slide. And again, Pompey might, not as easy as you think to come from League One to the Championship, so they might struggle a bit. But bottom three would be bottom Blackburn, Hull next, and Derby and Portsmouth fighting out for the third spot.
Graham is forever welcome at the Kassam Stadium, because there aren't going to be too many people that will have Oxford in at least 19th place this season.
Yeah, but have you seen who they bought? They've had.
I haven't. I saw that Brannigan's agreed a new contract, which is
they've
huge.
Had the most impressive recruitment of any team in the Championship, I would say, and spent some money. So I don't know how they got the money, and they've got a decent manager. So I think they'll be a surprise package. They might start off really well and slide a bit, but I wouldn't put them in the bottom four. No.
Interesting. Ben, John, which one of you two wants to go next?
Shall I go? I'll go. My two to go up in no particular order. I think Leeds and Luton. I think Luton might be a bit damp going forward, but I think Rob Edwards knows how to grind out results in this league. And I think Leeds obviously speaks for themselves. Even having to ship people off, they've still got an awful lot for this division. Those two going up. My playoffs, I don't know who'll go up, but I agree that Coventry will pick up where they finished off last season. They're players that were, just awful at the start of the season. Their new recruits came good, and they've picked up good players again. So if they hit the ground running, they'll easily be in the playoff, if not automatic contention. Burnley and West Brom, and then I think one of Sheffield United and Norwich will fill out. But I think Cov have got a real good shout. They'll probably be, I think, the team that will finish third. So I'll give them my shout for going up. It's really hard because it does feel like there's going to be a team that sort of falls off a cliff. Hull look that way. I do agree. I don't know if they'll fall all that way, but maybe someone like a Sunderland or, someone that maybe doesn't have a budget to speak of, but has done really well for a few years. All of a sudden the wheels start to fall off. They might come down. Blackburn, it's a weird one because everything says they should finish down there. But then I thought at the end of last season and used to somehow manage to grind out results, even though they were rubbish. So, they had a brilliant form to the end of last season in terms of results. So I think Derby and Oxford will struggle. I'm going to go for Derby, Oxford, Blackburn, purely because I want us to be out of the bottom three. So that would be my three to go down.
Mr. Allsop, the stage is yours before I throw my tuppence in.
Yeah, so I'll throw in. I agree with large numbers of the names that have been cited by the other two, but I'll try and throw in a couple of other shouts to keep things interesting. I do like every year do an actual table, and I haven't done that this year yet because I think it's a bit too early. So I will just say that any of these are subject to me changing my mind 6 times between now and the opening day. But I too have Leeds winning the league. I think they're going to be too strong. I think last season, even with their Leedsiness and mentality questions, they would have been too strong if the league hadn't happened to have such a ridiculous race for the top 2. So I think they'll win the league. Second, I think will be whichever of Burnley or Sheffield United overcomes the limitations of their manager the best. Chris Wilder, I think, obviously has a great record in the Championship, but also hasn't really done a good job in a while. Might be a bit of a busted flush. They're also in the process of recruitment. So I guess there's a bit of a question mark about that. Earlier, in my opinion, would be absolutely nailed on to go back up in terms of the kind of yo-yo caliber of side that they have. But I think Scott Parker is a dreadful manager. Really just dreary, uninspiring, plays terrible football. So, he might, as he did at Bournemouth, fall, arse first over the line with them as well. But I certainly am not going to say that with any confidence. In terms of playoffs, I'll agree with the Coventry and West Brom shouts. Coventry very strongly, and I will reserve judgment on the others for later. In terms of going down, I've got Blackburn bottom. I think that Ben is right that they ground out results at the back end of last season, but I'm not overly convinced by Eustace. And I think if they lose Schmodix and don't replace him, and with the other kind of issues they seem to have with signing players budget-wise, they were desperately poor when we played them. And I think if you take Schmodix's goals out of that side, they're going to be right down there. In terms of when I was jotting down other clubs I think might struggle, I agree with Sunderland, actually. I think that I'm not at all convinced by the managerial appointment. And if they lose Jack Clark, it's so easy for the vibes to go very, very toxic at Sunderland very, very quickly. We saw it at the back end of last season when, in the end, they didn't finish too far ahead of us on actual points, despite being theoretically a playoff chasing team. So, but I do think they've got enough money and probably enough sway to do a good managerial change that might get them out of it. I think I'm trying to sort of game out, and it's very difficult, what the managerial chopping and changing might be, because obviously in the end we ended up struggling so much because we had lost Schumacher and didn't replace him well. Birmingham ended up going down because they replaced a perfectly good manager for them with Rooney. So I'm sort of looking at the clubs where, again, hard to predict, but where I think something like that could be at play. And I think Portsmouth, if they lose Mousinho, could find themselves in a very similar basket to us last season, And I think especially, and this one is one I'm going to predict to actually go, Sheffield Wednesday. I never thought they looked particularly good under Danny Roll. I thought what they did look was much better organised and spirited. But when they played us and I went to the game at Hillsborough and we lost 1-0, and when I saw them on Sky a couple of times, I never thought they actually looked particularly good. And I think either they might just regress, given the, in my opinion, kind of lower quality of some of the players they have, or Roll will start well there and get tempted away to a much bigger job, and then I don't really trust the Sheffield Wednesday hierarchy to actually replace him well. Obviously, he was a great appointment, but I think there's a bit of luck involved in that, if I'm being completely honest. So I'll have them to go based on a kind of 4D chess scenario. I think Sunderland will just about stay up. I think Pompey will just about stay up. So I'm going to say Oxford to go. I agree. I do agree with Graham that their recruitment's been impressive. But I think they're coming from such a long way back in terms of existing championship experience in the squad. In terms of how much of a step up it's going to be for them. I am not remotely convinced by Des Buckingham, to be completely honest with you. I think he managed to get them on a great run of form at the back end of last season, aided in large part, by the way, by Josh Murphy, who was apparently phenomenal for them and now has left. I think it might just prove that promotion was a good run of momentum and a flash in the pan, and that they, even with the additions, really struggle. I expect them to be competitive, but I don't think they'll stay up. So, yeah, Blackburn, Sheffield Wednesday and Oxford are my current 3 to go.
Excellent. And for what it's worth, just very quickly before we do come to your comments, do keep sending them in for the second half of the programme. Aaron will be joined by Sam, Finn, and I think I'm hanging around for about 10 minutes, and then I don't know whether Ben's hanging around for a little bit as well. Who knows? Aaron will probably decide as he goes. That's often how he tends to do things. For what it's worth, I think the way the Championship's going to go this season is going to depend a lot on the managerial merry-go-round that could happen above this league. I think there are a large number of teams whose success and downfall will be based solely on their ability to keep hold of their managers. I don't think that will be a problem for Leeds United. I think they will, even if they do end up selling Somerville, Rutter and Nonto, I think, they've still got outstanding individuals that will get them over the line, and they will be able to recruit strongly. I'm intrigued by the idea of West Brom being up there with them again. Carlos Corberán, one of the best in the league. I just wonder whether they'll be able to sustain it if he were to be touted elsewhere. So I'd probably go with Sheffield United. I agree with what John says. I do think Chris Wilder is a bit of a he's a Marmite personality anyway, but I do just wonder if he's just sort of hanging on to what's left of what's been a largely successful career in the Football League. But I do just wonder how many more jobs he would get after Bramall Lane. So I'd probably go Leeds and Sheffield United as top two. I would probably say West Brom as the playoff team that I'll nominate. I agree with Coventry. I actually think Mark Robins is probably the best manager in the Championship. Incredibly underrated, and how he's never been considered for jobs higher is an actual crime against football. They'll be there.
That's actually Corberán is the best manager in the Championship. There were a couple of football data scientists who might have a podcast who did a definitive rundown of the top 24, like 1 to 24 managers. I think it would be very disrespectful to those people and their expertise to say that they might be wrong, So I think you have to say it's Corberán is the best. I think we should probably retract your statement there, Joe.
We're not going to plug anybody else's podcast on here, that is for sure. As for the teams at the bottom, as I mentioned, it's very much a case of who keeps hold of their manager, because you look at, as John mentions, Sheffield Wednesday, Danny Rule, surely it's not going to be too long before a big job comes his way, and he would be stupid to not take it. His career is only going one way, and unfortunately it won't be with Sheffield Wednesday. QPR will be another one. Martí Cifuentes, if it wasn't for him last year, they well and truly were in danger. And again, big jobs could come his way, and I do wonder how QPR would be able to recruit if he goes. That seems to come left field. You can do it once and be successful. Can you do it a second time? But I actually think there's a whole host of clubs who are going to be in the conversation for the relegation. I think it's going to be one of them leagues where everybody is going to beat everybody this year. I don't think, whilst Leeds are on paper the outstanding team, I don't think we've got a Leicester and Ipswich or a Southampton in this league this year. It's going to be an incredibly tight division. So I would throw in, Rosa Kernis commented, Aaron brought it up, I would throw Cardiff into the mix almost certainly. They are the one club who I think are a bit of an erupting volcano that could turn into a basket case at any moment. Bristol City are another one. I think they've probably been teetering for a few years now as to whether or not they'd throw in a dodgy season. There's a part of you as a football romantic that hopes plucky little Oxford can stay up. I do think they might struggle. I think Derby are potentially too old. I think they really desperately need to get some younger, fresher players into that side now. Portsmouth, I think Portsmouth will probably be fine, but again, the John Mousinho thing hangs over them, and not because I'm trying to start any sort of online rivalry, and I don't want people from Lancashire coming my way, but the betting odds, sorry, John, to disappoint you, the betting odds tell a story at times like this, and almost every bookmaker has Preston North End very high in the relegation odds for this season. And given that the owners released a very obscure statement at the end of last season talking about finances and investment and where the club's going, and the pretty dire runs that Preston were on last year, it won't take too many more bad runs before they can really slide themselves into position. But I think there's a whole host of clubs who could find themselves in trouble. Let's rattle through a couple of your questions before we get...
Just quickly, I was so sure you were going to say Stoke when you started talking about fan rivalries. I would have loved that so much.
To be honest with you, John, if it wasn't for West Brom and Coventry, this will be slightly controversial on the Green and White podcast, I would probably put Stoke City in there as my playoff team. I think they're going to be at completely the other end of the table this year. Aaron, you can keep pulling that face all you like backstage, but I do think Stoke will be much higher than they have been this year. Let's quickly rattle through a couple of your questions, because I think we're still waiting for Sam and Finn backstage, so we're still on for another couple of minutes anyway. Graham, come to you. How much do you think Michael Cooper is actually worth at this stage of his career, and do you think he'll be sold before the end of the season? Well, do you think he'll be sold by the end of the week, let alone the end of the season?
Well, he's been rumoured to be going to a number of teams, and one by one, those teams have got alternative goalkeepers. And the Sheffield United rumour has persisted for some time, but the club have denied it. And Wayne Rooney seems to be sure that he's going to be here come the end of the transfer window. And if he is, it makes sense all round that he actually signs the contract that he could have signed before. And we protect our position with him, and he protects his. He gets a wage increase. If he plays well in the Championship, the doubters in the Premiership might come knocking on his door again. Difficult to say what he's worth. He's only worth what somebody is prepared to pay for him. And there aren't many clubs that are looking for a first-team goalkeeper at the moment. Certainly in the Premiership, they're all taken. It was rumoured that one or two Prem clubs wanted him as a number 2, which clearly wouldn't have been in his interests. I'm not sure about Sheffield United. You talk about basket case teams. Their takeover is stalling, not likely to go through until September. They can only buy players by transfer funds coming in. So I do wonder whether Coops will be going. I mean, it was rumoured he was going to be gone by this week, and he hasn't. So I think he'll be here, and I'm grateful for that. Connor's a good replacement, but we need another one. I think Carl Rushmore at Brighton was rumoured as a potential loan acquisition if he went, but Brighton have got their main keeper's got injured, I think. So I don't know how. But in my gut, I think Coops will be with us at the end of the transfer window.
John, come to you. We'll do one more question, then we'll get the rest of the guys in because they're backstage. Ben, I would ask you a question, but I do suspect you might be needed a little bit in the second half of tonight's programme. John, just very quickly, do you think we're looking a little bit short on central midfielders, possibly another centre-back?
I don't know if we're looking short on central midfielders, just numbers-wise. I mean, we've got Houghton, Randall, JB, Forshaw, and Paulson. And Roberts, and I don't know if I've forgotten anyone, but that's 6 players for presumably 2 slots in a 4-4-2, and 6 players who have very different, profiles. Joe Edwards, of course, can also play in there. So, I don't know if I think we're short in midfield. I think we're at a stage where if we are in a position to do a deal for someone who is better than any of those players, then we should do it. Of course, I think there's pretty much nowhere in the team that I would say we shouldn't be looking to do an upgrade. If we can always move on. One of the players who that move might mean they don't have as much game time, be it on loan or permanently. But I don't worry too much about that position. Defensively, I think it would be nice to get another centre back in, and I think Graham alluded to it, just someone who is a bit of a battle axe at this level. I don't think we should just be signing someone in a kind of Derby County-esque way who's 35 just for his head in the dressing room or anything. I think it would have to be someone who can play.
But I think Richard Keogh is devastated at this news.
Yes, but I think that would be welcome. Especially given that Scar, for instance, a player I think deserves an enormous amount of respect. Is he the best in a back 2 as opposed to sort of a pivot in a back 3? I don't know, honestly. One thing we haven't mentioned yet in terms of centre backs is that Lewis Gibson is still at the club, and there was an enormous amount of transfer speculation about him towards the back end of last season that he was definitely off to Luton or wherever. That seems to have gone quiet. Obviously, he could go, but I think amid all the talk about Cooper and Whittaker and whether they will stay, Gibson was a huge player for us last season. And if we can hang on to him past the end of the window, that will be a really good piece of business as well. And we shouldn't leave him out of that conversation.
And let's not forget, for certain members of the community, he is the best centre-back they've ever seen play for Plymouth Argyle. John, Graham, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
We will see you both in future weeks as we rotate the squad somewhat and get Finn and the People's Podcaster of the Year from last season in on the action. Sam, they will join Aaron. Ben, I'm going to put you backstage just very briefly because I think Aaron's got me for about another 10 minutes or so to basically, I don't know, ask me whatever he wants to if he really fancies it. But rotation is complete. Aaron, for the next hour or so, the show's yours.
Hello, and for the benefit of the audio listeners, welcome to part 2 of our season preview, where we pull out the actual A team, despite what Joe said in the last pod. Obviously, Sam, Finn, Ben will be on in a second, and we're being graced by Joe's presence. Joe, the questions that you gave your panelists. I just wanted your take on them, really, and then we're going to get on to a question that you got very heated about in the group chat about young Mr. Baker going to Parkway. But actually, let's start with that. Weird place to start. Obviously, he's joined Parkway to play in goal. Although the other day, Luke McCormick was in the net for Parkway up at Bideford. So. Although he did concede 3. So you weren't too impressed by that loan deal, were you?
No, and it's purely because of actually where the football club finds itself now that I'm just a little bit disappointed that we're a championship club and we're still loaning one of our highly regarded and most promising young talents to Parkway at the level that they're playing at. You know, if all we hear about is how highly that Daryl Flahavan, Neil Dewsnip and the hierarchy at Argyle feel about Zach Baker. And surely if we felt that highly about them, that we'd be able to get them a loan spell at a much higher level in the football pyramid. Look, it's a deal that obviously makes a lot of sense to Argyle because he's staying in the city. He's still able to train at the club bar, probably 1-2 sessions a week at Parkway, if that. And then he'd go and play a game for them on the Saturday and he'd be back with Argyle on the Monday. So from that sense, it probably is a lot easier for them. They can keep a better eye on them. But from his own development for his career, I'm not totally sure, other than playing 90 minutes every week, what he's actually going to gain from it. I'd like to think we could do a lot better in the level of loan that he's to go at. I mean, we know certainly from that excellent video that the Argyle TV did out in Puerto Banús in Marbella when Daryl Flahavan was mic'd up and it was a solo goalkeeping session, just how keen he was on Zach Baker and how much he talked him up at the end of the session. So it just surprised me a little bit that here's somebody who is our third choice goalkeeper, is our, potentially, depending on how the next couple of weeks go, could end up being our backup goalkeeper. I mean, he's out on loan, but he will be the only other keeper on the books. And yet we're loaning him out to a team that plays in the 8th tier of English football. I just feel like when we were in League 2 and even in League 1, that loaning youngsters to Parkway, had a bit of sense about it. But now that we're in the Championship, in one of the leagues that's in the top 10 of the world and certainly in Europe, that I think we should be looking at different options for our best young players. But that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, apologies if my audio was terrible. I thought I'd fixed my mic and I clearly haven't. So I'm going to switch to my MacBook mic. So yeah, that's really good. Sam, whilst you're on mute, good input there.
No, the best thing about Sam there is he's not on mute and you still can't hear him. Carry on.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that bodes well. Still can't hear you, Sam. Anyway, Joe, we're going to get on to the Cooper discussions in a bit. But before we do that, is there any worry that the reason Baker's gone to Parkway is because he can be recalled at any time? Do you reckon
surely he could be recalled at any time from any loan deal that he goes on, if we have any sense.
Yeah, I suppose, unless it's a league loan. But yeah, I'm not sure he would be aiming that high. Anyway, I think a National League South side would have been a good challenge for him as well.
I would agree at that sort of level. I mean, I just feel like, I know it's only 1-2 levels up from Parkway, but it's still a much better standard. And when you think of what Torquay are going to possess in the National League South, that was quite an interesting division last year. And he'd be going up against players who had only recently dropped out of the National League or even League Two. So I just feel like he'd gain a little bit more playing at that sort of level than what he will for Parkway. I could be proved wrong. It could end up being an absolute masterstroke, but.
Go on then, Joe, before we let you go, because this is the question that I'm going to start with for the others so that they can get ready. Any gaps in the squad that you're worried about positionally?
I still think we're a little bit light on the right side of the fence. I take on board what the two lads, Ben and Graham, said in the first part of the programme. For the audio listeners, do go back and catch part one. What they said about... Sam's disappeared. Excellent. What they said about Ogbeta and Mumba and players like that playing on that right-hand side. I do just wonder whether or not we could do with another player on that side of defence, maybe even a centre half, because as John says, are we totally convinced Dan Scar would work in a back two? And with Pleguezuelo, I was never totally as sold as a lot of the Green Army were at various points of last season. So I'd like somebody there. There's a clamouring for another midfielder. I don't know so much. If you can bank on Adam Forshaw being fit for 60-70% of the league programme, I think we probably wouldn't need another one in there, because it's likely if we are playing a 4-4-2, you're only going to need two central midfielders anyway. And with Forshaw, Randall, Houghton, Darko JB in there as well, there's four really good players there that we know the best of and we know what we can get out of them. So there's that, and there's the obvious one about Michael Cooper. I know you're going to touch on it a lot more in this part than what we did in the first part of the programme. If an offer materialises, which at the moment it doesn't seem to have, despite all the ITKs on Twitter telling us it was done about 5 times in the last month or so, and he's still our player. In fact, he was our captain for half an hour yesterday. I do just sort of feel like, we are going to need another goalkeeper, likely a loan. But if we can also get Jaden Dans over the line, I think that will probably trump any other bit of business we'd have done this transfer window. As for Femi Aziz, I seem to think he signed a new contract at the start of this transfer window. That's in the back of my mind. I think that pretty much quashed any remote chance of us going back in for him. I'm pretty sure at the end of last season he signed a new long-term deal. But I think overall our transfer business has been good. But if you can add 1 or 2 bits of quality between now and a month's time before we're all sat here for 3 hours in our yellow ties, waiting and hoping that we sign somebody on deadline day this time around, then I think we can see our transfer business being a pretty good window, and our summer business often tends to be.
Brilliant. Well, cheers, Joe. Going to let you go.
No problem.
I know you're keen to go and watch the Olympics, so off you pop.
I am.
See you later.
See you in a bit.
Au revoir, as they say in Paris. Here he is. He's back again. Do you want to do a quick mic test, Sam? No, we cannot.
Yes, who's back?
Yeah. Anyway, and Finn has disappeared. So Ben, I feel
Good job I hung around, wasn't it?
Exactly. Absolutely brilliant. Oh, Finn's back. I'm going to go to Finn, actually. Firstly, Finn, hope you're well. Hope you're good. Same question. I think Joe's covered it pretty well, but is there anywhere else in the squad that you would want strengthened?
I've been saying it for weeks, and initially I thought that Paulson had come in to be a centre back, but it looks like he's more of a centre midfielder. For me, we still need our right centre back. I'm not sure if this is too controversial, but I'm a big believer in playing your best players in their best positions. Now, I believe that Brendan Galloway and Lewis Gibson are 2 of our best players. But yet they're both left-footed centre-backs. So I didn't think that Gibson disgraced himself last season playing right centre-back quite a bit, but I also wouldn't want to play him there on a regular if we had a choice. Does that make sense? So I think right centre-back is a real position of need for us. You've sort of touched on Cooper a bit. I think, I would don't want him to go, but I would prefer him to go if that meant that we got decent cash out of him that we could reinvest in a keeper and then another player. Because I think, I think there's not necessarily. Obviously, you want a good goalkeeper. Connor Hazard isn't a bad goalkeeper. However, I wouldn't want him to be playing the full season if I'm honest. If we want to improve the squad, but as a backup, he's completely fine. But there's an argument to be said, like if you had a goalkeeper, he might not need to be as good as Cooper if we were able to improve the team in other areas, particularly in the defence. So, yeah, I think right centre back is the one that I really want. Aside from that, maybe a right back, but that's really like if we had the luxury, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, should we try again? Third time lucky?
Testing 1, 2.
Hey!
I mean, it's very tinny, but it's better than nothing. So
sounds like you and Sam, Aaron, were on one of those toy telephones you make with the cans and the string.
Absolutely. I wish I was that close to Sam to be able to make that a possibility. Sam, Alan Nixon is reporting, as we've tweeted out and has been doing the rounds, £3 million is our asking price for Michael Cooper. Thoughts? That feels incredibly low to me, even for a man who's got a year left on his contract.
I don't think teams are going to pay any more than that for him. I really don't. And I think at the minute, teams aren't even paying that for him. That's not to say we should definitely accept it, because if teams are only offering, say, 2 million, 2.5 million, in that scenario, I do feel that he's worth more to us staying for a whole season and the extra points that incur from having such a quality keeper than he is from having the fee. Now, where we'll have to, maybe argue, debate, disagree, is where that threshold is. Where is the threshold whereby he's worth more to us? I honestly think it's about 3 million, in truth, because yes, we're not going to keep her as good as him, but we can reinvest it in other areas of the squad, so on and so forth. And broadly, with some exceptions, our recruitment has been on the better side over the past 2 or 3 years. So I honestly would back 3 million, 3.5 million to be the figure at which it would be more beneficial to us as opposed to losing them on a free transfer. If clubs aren't getting close to 3 million, if they're offering 2, 2.5, whatever, then I think, you know what, we need to send a signal we're not going to be mugged off with a very low offer, and the points benefit of having such a high quality goalkeeper would be worth keeping him. But I do think we need to just temper the expectations a bit of what clubs are going to offer. I feel that now you don't see it so much, but up until very recently, you would see all over Twitter Argyle fans getting very excited, saying he's going to be a future England number 1. Well, hang on a minute, he's 25 years old in October and he's only played 20 games in the Championship. How many international goalkeepers of a top quality team like England who are getting to semi-finals and finals of Euros have been such late developers as that? Virtually none. Nick Pope is the only one, and even he was playing in the Premier League by about the age Cooper is now, or certainly very close to it. So I think the chances of him being England number 1 are non-existent. I think the chances of him ever playing for England are very low. I think possible, but still pretty low. So we need to be realistic. He's a very good goalkeeper for us. He had an excellent spell in the team last season after his second injury, and a pretty good spell between his 2 injuries. But clubs are absolutely not going to offer stuff like 6, 7, 8 million for a nearly 25-year-old keeper who has had knee operations on both knees and is perhaps a little on the shorter side in terms of stature for what Premier League keepers generally are. So all that considered, yes, I think they would gamble 2 to 3 million on him. Absolutely. I don't think they would, and I think they'd certainly gamble him on a free transfer if we let his contract run down. But I don't think they'd gamble 7 to 8 million. That figure is just not going to be offered in any reasonable world, unfortunately. I'd love it if it did. And if we could get a bidding war going, and if we could get it up even higher, all the better. But I think in the question, Aaron, of is 3 million stupidly low, what we've got to remember is that at the moment, teams aren't even offering that, are they? According to Alan Nixon. So he's worth what teams value him at. And I think ultimately teams value him as a 2 million gamble. They don't value him as a 5 million gamble. That's how I see it playing out. I do feel that he probably will be with us for the rest of the season, just because I don't see the valuation being met in the middle. And I think the hope is that we have such a good start to the season and Wazball pays off and we're flying in mid-table and we go back to him and say, look, have a little think about this offer again, and he signs it. But we have to run the risk that we are going to possibly let his contract run down the free. And as much as we don't want to do that, we also can't magic up bids that don't exist. And if the bids that come in are not worth selling him for, you may just have to take the hit and accept some players are going to sometimes leave on a free. That's my take on the matter. Probably rambled on a bit. Sorry for the bad sound quality. I did try and have a proper headset, but as you could hear, it wasn't working. So I've had to go back to my AirPods. So yeah, that's my take on Cooper. Thank you very much.
So we couldn't hear it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, quite thin. More so we couldn't hear it. Yeah, I am also just back from from 10 days abroad. By the way, so if my voice is a little croaky and if I look a little run down with bags under my eyes, that's just because I'm incredibly tired and sleep deprived and still a little bit hangover. So yeah, there we go.
Oh, wow.
It's also the first time I've ever seen you wear a Argyle shirt on a podcast, for what I can remember. So it's.
I had to have one for the flight. But when I say got back in, I mean literally just got back in about 20 minutes ago. So you may have seen my housemate George in the background trying to get the Wi-Fi while I'm currently running on hotspot. So yeah, good nice little taster for the listeners of the chaotic personal life.
Oh, well, at least it's all going well over in Casa Downs. Ben, anything to add on the Cooper situation? I know you're a man that would weigh up the risks and the percentages and the data and the analytics. What do you think is best to do? Cash in or keep?
Well, there's an idiom, isn't there, that there's a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. In that a sure thing is perhaps worth more than a gamble. I do think Mike Cooper adds points to our total this season if he stays, and potentially that keeps us up, but it's not a guarantee. Now, staying up, the difference between the Sky money for the Championship and League One, and also who you can attract as a team, is about 4 or 5 million, something like that, between the difference between the two. So basically what the club are saying is, in their eyes, a guaranteed sort of like 2.5 to 3 million with add-ons, or 3 million with potential add-ons and sell-on fees is worth more as a guaranteed bird in the hand than sort of the 5 million that he could potentially earn us by keeping us in the league. Because let's not forget, we might stay in the league without Mike Cooper. We also might keep Mike Cooper and he gains us 5, maybe even 10 points, and yet we still go down. So there has to come a point at which you say, look, no, actually guaranteed money isn't something to sniff at. But I think Sam's right. You have to guess where the line is and make a business decision. And I think that it's worth the risk to keep him and lose him on a free, because a club won't give him a £2 million signing on fee. You imagine he would get high 6 figures to low 7 figures as a signing on fee. So they won't have to pay as much if they sign him as a free agent as they would if they're paying us a signing fee. Transfer fee rather. So I think that you have to take that risk because of the benefit he brings, the points he adds to the team over the course of this season. We're going to need those points, but there is a point at which you have to start listening, and that probably is about right. In all honesty, I think that's slightly better than a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, isn't it? 3 for 5, if you want to call it that sort of gamble, equate the two values roughly. So yeah, I think they're, the club. I was previously in the camp of keep him and bank the points, but 3 million is very useful if we get a couple of injuries. January, we might be desperate for some reinforcements, as an example, and then you've got, you've already brought a keeper in, which we'll have to do. You've still got maybe $1 million or 2 left over for potential reinforcements, whether that's loan fees or outright purchases to reinforce. So it's remembering that there's a future they have to plan for as well at the club, as well as this one season. They're also planning ahead already with strategies. So I do think that that's about right. And yeah, I think it's worth the risk of him going than just accepting anything less, because it's, as Sam says, it sets a precedent that you don't want as a club now, coming into as a small fish now in a bigger pond, we don't want to be a club that's easily bullied out of our best talent.
And it's not exactly like, no offense to Luke Jeffcott, but it's not exactly like Luke Jeffcott, where it's very much like his game is, on the face of it, quite limited. He scored a fair amount of goals this season, and he might not do it. He might not do the same next season. Like Michael Cooper's had, he's had a couple of injuries recently, or 3 injuries recently, but he's essentially had basically 2.5 seasons of very, very good football, and playing very, very well. So, the proof is in the pudding, I feel like, for him now. He's got he might not have that many championship appearances, but he certainly has 100 and something Football League appearances. It's hardly like a small number, and he's obviously of very much quality. So I feel like, I would go with what everyone else is saying. They're saying 3 million is not a small amount of money at all, and circumstances being different, 3 million would be an insulting amount of money, as Stevie mentioned. but I think 3 million, all things considered, year left on his contract, 2 knee operations, and the fact he is 25, as some saying, that's still young. He's still got potentially another 10 years. But for a goalkeeper, but then again, most clubs are looking at people like James Trafford, who was like 20, and I saw a comment in the comments that was like, he had a better season in League One than Trafford, which I believe is true. And I actually personally think Michael Keeper is a better keeper than James Trafford, genuinely. But with the way that football is now, people don't look as much at shot stopping as they used to. And Michael Cooper's kicking game, although it has improved, is probably by far the weakest point in his game. So I think about 3 million is probably about the right figure, all things considered. And if I was the club, I would try and sort of be ushering them out the door, for the reason what Ben said, is like, we don't want this reputation of, because we basically put it out there that we want to be this team that brings players through the academy and develops them and sells them on, or bringing in players like Morgan Whittaker and selling them on for potentially 9-10 million plus. And then if we, Cooper's the first real opportunity we've had of this new structure to do that, in terms of the quality of player that we've developed and the new ethos that we have, and then just to let him go on a free would be a bit of a mockery, I think.
I get that. It's a fine balance, isn't it? But it would also be a mockery, I think, to let him go for under 2 million, though. So we can only accept the offers that are coming in. So I really do get what you're saying, but I think we have to find the right balance, because yes, it will be a mockery if we let him go on a free, but it would also be a mockery if we sold him for, say, 1.5, 1.8, even 2.0. So for me, like, it's all about where we draw that threshold, whereby letting him go for nothing is the lesser evil. I would say that threshold is pretty much bang on the 3 million mark. Maybe for some people it's lower, but equally, if I hope that people who are saying that by all costs do not let him go on a free, I hope that if we then do sell him for 2 million, then the people saying that don't kick off too much, because if that's all teams are offering, then we may just have, by that logic, we would have to accept it. I think take the risk, because he may extend in the autumn, but that's the dilemma, isn't it? I guess we've covered all the angles.
Pretty much. As this is a season preview pod, let's preview the season then, Sam. Just give us your thoughts on the 2024-2025 EFL Championship season. Just summarise how you think Argyle are going to do as a whole.
I think it's so mad it just might work. But we're playing the formation that virtually nobody played in this league last season, or has played in the Premier League for ages. with like a manager who has a track record which is, shall we say, without wanting to be corrected on the finer detail again, like I may have been in Spain, track record that is variable, let's say. It always has a bit of a feel of Claudio Ranieri going into Leicester, doesn't it? Like the least favoured team in the league, playing 4-4-2 with a second striker, and they go and win the league. So that's what I'm going to do. No, we're not. No, we're not. Of course, we're not. But we might do better than people think. I kind of feel that there's a chance of that, because I do think Cooper, based on the premise of Cooper being with us, yes, even if we do lose him on a free, him being with us for a season, I think, could get us that extra 5 to 10 points, just because he is such a magnificent shot stopper and so good at commanding his area. I think if you have Whittaker on one side, Sissoko on the other, that's two fantastic wide players. You can maybe argue with Whittaker and his habit of cutting in. Is that ideal for a 4-4-2 where you maybe need to behave a bit more like traditional wingers? Possibly that's the concern. But I really think Sissoko has got a whole load of quality about him. And I think maybe Tijani might be one of those players who, despite his record not being great, comes good in a two up front, because I do feel
Lucas Jukovic, someone like that.
Yeah, I think again, I'm very limited seeing him, but in Spain and from sort of highlights packages, whatever, I think he's got that sort of kind of chaotic wrecking ball style of running, whereby having a second striker to pick up on it really may help. I think Jayden Dams, if we can, strong rumours, if we can get him over the line, I think he could be a great signing. I'm not going to pretend I've seen him play very much, because I haven't. But if you get given 60 minutes in a League Cup final that your team win, you've got to have some quality about you. So I don't know. Maybe I've drunk the Kool-Aid too much and I'm being too optimistic. I just sort of feel it's just a bit mad and crazy. And often you have those teams that have that real tactical diversity compared to the rest of the league, who are generally sort of converging around either a 3-4-3 or a 4-3-3, quite conventionally possession-based style. The teams that do have that tactical diversity can sometimes, at least at the start of the season, spring a few surprises, catch a few teams out. We have pretty much for every season of the past, goodness knows how many, performed significantly above our budget. Players still to come in to add to quality. I honestly think we're going to improve on last season, is my feeling at the moment. Maybe not a great deal of basis for any outside objective person to say that, but I sort of feel that the club have got enough credit in the bank on this kind of thing that and there's enough sort of reasons that maybe the Argyle squad is more suited to that rapid, high tempo, courageous style of football that Rooney has spoken publicly about how much she likes, rather than the Birmingham style that was very much drilled for Eustace's fairly functional style. So I'm coming around to sort of lower mid-table, and I could be hopelessly wrong, but that's not what I'm thinking right now.
So you're completely disregarding every pundit's prediction that we are going to finish in the bottom three.
The last time a pundit organisation predicted us, pundit organisation, that's a great turn of phrase, you can tell I'm tired. The last time a media outlet of lower league pundits predicted us to finish in the relegation places, it was because we'd lost Will Aitken, Ben Reeves and Frank Nouble. Granted, this time they are much more informed and have a much more accurate basis to predicting it, but I'm still not going to necessarily agree with them.
Yeah, I remember panicking after hearing that exact pod. And wondering, I think it was John that basically slapped me and was like, honestly to God, we haven't lost. We've lost nobody important there. We'll be absolutely fine. And I was panicking.
You didn't even know John back then, did you? That was before.
What do you mean? Will Aitken scored the most important deflection in Devon Derby history. So,
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Actually, letting him go actually won us the league. So, swings and roundabouts. Ben, you've already had your say on it, so I'm going to jump to Finn. Thoughts on the season ahead? How are we getting on?
We're going to go down. Sorry.
So you're the first one to predict us to go down.
Yeah, no, I don't. Listen, I don't think we will go. I honestly think Rooney Ball will be quite entertaining on the face of it, but I think there's too many holes to ignore, both in his record. I don't want to take what Birmingham fans say as gospel, but I think maybe Derby fans also said the same, that Rooney isn't very tactically flexible in terms of like, I mean, it was blindingly obvious. Steven Schumacher was one of the best tacticians that I've seen, even from a more biased point of view, with him being our manager at a sort of lower league level, at sort of changing things in game, even when you don't notice it. The kind of constant rotation that we had in his teams, and then it was just the complete opposite with Ian Foster. I don't think it's going to be as bad as Ian Foster, but I do think there's probably a case to say Rooney is a little bit one-dimensional when it comes to tactics. That's not to say that his system won't be exciting or fun to watch, but I think we're just going to get beaten by too many of the better sides. And like the only reason we stayed up last season is because we had Steven Schumacher, essentially, because Ian Foster was. I can say it now.
You say that though, Fitz. Obviously Foster was terrible, but
disrespect. Sorry, that was a bit of disrespect to Nance Gibber and Juicenip. They had us very well set up in those last few games. But you know what I mean. If we had Ian Foster the whole season, we would have gone down. And I just feel like Wayne Rooney is a lot closer to Ian Foster in terms of his knowledge of how to manage a team than Steven Schumacher. That might be a bit too simplified, but that's just how I feel about it.
But the spectrum of Scouse behind the guy.
Sorry. What were you saying, sorry?
So I just thought it just seemed like a spectrum of Scouse from Ian Foster on one end to Steven Schumacher on the middle. Yeah. Where does Rooney? Is Rooney going to end up closer to Schumacher or Foster?
But I mean, I really, really want the guys to succeed. I like the fact that he very, very, very clearly isn't motivated by money, and that the guy is very, very clearly very passionate about football, and he's probably more knowledgeable about football than any of the three managers that we had in terms of how to play the game by far. But playing and managing is a very different thing, and I believe that he will have the trust of the players because of what he achieved in the game, and the respect of the players because of what he achieved in the game. But it's yet to be seen whether that will be able to last when the season really sort of gets to the tough end of it.
Helps if I unmute myself.
Everything you said, Finn, just makes total sense. But I feel I don't know. There's just something about the way he speaks, something about how he talks about the style of football he liked to see. The fact he's now having that transfer window for the first time in England, not the first time overall, but the first time in England to build his squad together. Something about me is just taking a bit of a leap of, I'm not going to say blind faith, because I feel I've partly justified it, but almost blind faith.
Yeah, and to be fair, Sam, to be fair, you were in that sort of vacuum in Spain, so you would have got a feeling of how it feels in there. That can also be could be very informed, but can also be a little bit misinformed, maybe. Not from you, but you know what I mean. You kind of are around club officials.
Oh, there's such a thing as getting sucked in and getting carried away with the hype for sure, and maybe it will prove that I have done that, but I don't know. It's I feel it's not totally justified, but it's partly justified.
I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just giving the sort of balance of the spectrum, I guess. But also, who would want to be? I'm looking forward to this season, but I still think we're going to get relegated, if that makes any sense. Because I think I think we were going to struggle anyway this season. If we look at how competitive the league is, I thought that anyway. Did I think we sort of made our chances harder a bit with Rooney? Maybe. But I'm all behind him and really want him to prove me wrong. And what would be the point of being a football fan if you couldn't be optimistic and sort of maybe sometimes a bit overly excited about your team? But yeah, we'll just wait and see. I mean, the good thing is I was at a festival at the weekend, and then some people commented on my Argyle shirt, And some guy said, "Oh, what do you think of Rooney?" And I said, "Well, my expectations aren't anything, so the only way is up." And that's kind of way I'm feeling about it in a positive sense.
Yeah, absolutely. For what it's worth, I think. Yeah, exactly. What I think we're in for a fairly similar season in that we stay up by the skin of our teeth, but sort of the other way around. We start off with somebody who isn't in the Stephen Schumacher mold, and we finish it with somebody who is, putting it nicely. As much as I want it to work, as much as I said I'm going to put all my negativity behind me, and I want to stay positive, and I do really want to see Wayne Rooney do well. I really want the project to work, and the more I think about it, the less angry I get at the appointment, and the more I listen to why they took the decisions, the more I understand it. There's still a part of me that's like, yeah, but it's Wayne Rooney. It's not really.
You can still only, at the end of the day, you can still only give your most honest prediction. That the fact that you don't predict it will go well, that doesn't invalidate how much you want it to go well. So it's completely a valid prediction, even so. And look, if I was going purely on rationalism and like weighting the squad strength, weighting the manager track record, yes, on that I probably would say 23rd or 24th, Oxford being the only variable. So, but then there is always that surprise team. So I'm going partly on rationalism, but also partly on that little bit of sprinkling of magic we have. That means we always seem to outperform teams who have, in theory, better money in squads than us. I'm just banking on that continuing and banking on their tactical diversity, unusual nature of the way we're going to be playing, being something that just catches teams out and gets us enough wins. And I guess we'll just have to see if it does or doesn't.
Yeah, there's a comment from VW Coco that says, one thing for sure. One thing that is for sure is that there will be lots of goals for and against. I think it does look like we're gonna be in for that exciting attacking football that we were craving so much during that Ian Foster spell.
In what I've coined as the down paradox in the group chat, it's sometimes ironically more enjoyable watching your team win less but play nicer football than grinding out results and being successful every week. And it's kind of it's going back to a similar point that's made earlier. It's where you draw that line, isn't it, between wanting to watch entertaining football and wanting to win. You had Leicester fans last season being dreadfully ungrateful because of the boring nature that they saw of the wins they were getting, despite absolutely smashing the league. Now, I don't think we would, I think we'd all happily take survival with some boring wins, but at the very least, if we are going to go down, like VW Coco said, at least if it all goes to shambles, it's going to be fun to watch. And that's, with football being an entertainment industry, at least we'll have a laugh along the way. Worst case scenario.
So I think, not to touch too much on Ian Foster because that's been and gone. But the thing last season with him was not necessarily that we were losing the majority of the games, because you look at the teams that we played up until that sort of Sheffield Wednesday and Blackburn, which is where it really got me worried, because that was the teams we were picking up points against regardless all season. It was just really boring. Like, there's no way else to put it. There was no inspiration from anywhere, and that's one thing that does encourage me, is the profile of player we have signed up until now is kind of quite, rogue and exciting, and sort of what you want as a football player. It's like we've got a player that no one else knew of, but he's absolutely class, So it's a bit like that, I guess that. So there are reasons to be optimistic, but I'm going for sort of sense over not at the moment. I'd love to be proved wrong.
Yeah, just flashed up a comment by T. William that says, I think we're in for a surprise. I reckon we can finish top 12.
I'd love a season like Cardiff where we just win and lose and win and lose, and it just be like that the whole season. That'd be quite nice. Just mid-table, smack bang.
Even I'm not that optimistic, T. William. Even I'm not saying top 12. I'm saying about 15th, 16th. But that would be quite something if we came top 12.
If Wayne Rooney gets us to finish inside the top 12, I will eat my signed bucket hat. There we go. Live on the pod. Boil it. because I'd be so happy. I'll take a lovely mid-table finish. Where do we go from here? Obviously, Finn, we want to give some credence to what we spoke about in the group chat earlier. Obviously, first game of the season, ticket details have been announced for Sheffield Wednesday. One thing that is constant, actually, we'll come on to you in a second, Finn. One thing that is constant, Ben, is just every single football club seemingly want to rip off every fan imaginable. 36 quid to go to Hillsborough.
Yeah. There was a 20s plenty, isn't there, not too long ago, and now all of a sudden we're rapidly approaching 30 quid a game. And I understand, costs go up for everyone, including businesses. But, I don't think that how many years it was, the 20s plenty started not too long ago, about 5-6 years ago. I don't think that everyone's income has gone up by 50% in that time, and yet ticket prices have gone up sort of seemingly close to 50% in a lot of places, and other places even worse. You see the Leeds tweet that's going around, or the Leeds fan tweeting that the club's been asking them, do you want to pay sort of 800 quid for an away season ticket and stuff, and doing away with their loyalty schemes and things, and it's just a slow creep of this kind of football clubs are businesses now. We know that, but they have a strange existence of their roots in amateur sport and in community, that they're slightly more than businesses. Owners, in fact, do come and go, unlike American sport franchises, etc., where they can be moved around the country. You look at Wimbledon, it's literally a different club, a different business, but the club itself is still the same club, because it's the identity and the area and the culture that is really the club and not the business itself. And so there is a fine line, I think, between just saying, someone else will pay it if you don't, and the idea of trying to keep a community and a club identity authentic. Otherwise, you do literally become a business. There becomes no sense of togetherness or community. We just become disparate voices, and it's a worrying. And it's all well and good to say, well, we'll charge Wednesday fans the same, but I mean that disenfranchises Wednesday fans who don't have a lot of money. I mean, yes, but traveling to an away game costs a lot anyway. But it speaking from personal experience, the difference between 20 quid and 26 quid and 36 quid actually can make a lot of difference. It can be the difference between whether you can afford it that week or that month. It's not just disposable income for everybody to find that. And there have been many instances online of fans saying, I can't get my son his season ticket this season, I just can't find it. Even by direct debit, I'm just not going to be able to, etc. It does affect people, really, and it is a bit of a worry. And seeing that for the first game of the season is a bit of a there's a tweet that's come up of day one of posting, that's a nice hat, chap, until Aaron boils and eats his Wazza signed Argyle bucket hat. It is a bit of a kick in the teeth first game of the season, but hopefully we'll get the reciprocal deals in place more often, and we won't be on the receiving end of that too much. I won't have to talk about it too much.
Yeah, and as you say, obviously to get there, it costs money. Finn, I feel like you are best placed to talk about this through your obviously personal experience. Let's be real. That they've conducted a review. The club have conducted a review of the Miles Away Travel Club, and they are now able to advise on the structure for the club travel for 2024. The main thing being they've frozen the cost of membership. But in order to make the service financially viable in the face of rising costs, regrettably, it will be no longer possible to offer complimentary travel for personal assistance. Obviously, match tickets are unaffected by this. So complimentary match tickets for PAs who are registered with a ticket office will still be available. But supporters will now need to purchase a coach ticket for the PA should they wish to travel via this service. I don't really know what the question is.
Can I just jump in before? Obviously, Finn's personal experience is going to be much more valuable. But having worked in the support industry for a good number of years, mostly in education, so it's a very different kind of sector. But it's this is in no way implying that the club are doing anything underhand or illegal. Just to say that at the outset, but with the Disability Discrimination Act, Section 3 requires clubs or services of any sort to make allowances, make physical changes for people with disabilities to access their services. And Section 5, I think, deals with public transport. So a private transport company would sort of come under both of the strictures of both of those in different ways. And just to be sort of people can take a guide dog into places where dogs not allowed, because that is a living thing that's seen as an aid for the person. And support workers, to personal assistants are in their job, in their role, aids for disabled people. And I'm not suggesting that in doing this, in charging for personal assistance, the club is breaking DDA. That's definitely not what I'm saying. But you would be able to take a guide dog onto a coach without, or public transport, without being charged for the dog. You wouldn't have to pay for a seat. You would be able to go onto a bus or a public transport, a train, with a motorized wheelchair which takes up the space of 4 seats, and you would be charged 1 ticket, not 4. Essentially, that is the human personal assistant is the equivalent of that wheelchair in certain aspects of law, not under every aspect of the DDA. And of course, the principles work differently according to, just like the principle of what's a reasonable adjustment. Like what's reasonable adjustment and what you can expect a business to foot the bill for depends oftentimes on things like how important it is. If it prevents someone from getting out of the building in a fire, well, yeah, you're gonna have to pay several thousands of pounds to fix that. If it just makes life slightly inconvenient, then it might be ruled that you don't need to make that adjustment. Now, if you're deemed to need a personal assistant to go and watch a football match, that's deemed as an essential to you being able to access that service. For example, if you're visually impaired, if you're deaf, or hearing impaired, and you need someone to assist, that is a intrinsic part of what you need to access that service. So I don't know if the coach is and the transport is by the club, if it's subcontracted out, but it's very close to the line of asking, if you're paying basically to take your personal equipment. If you were to ask people to pay to take their wheelchairs or etc. on public transport or on personal or on private transport, people would be up in arms. That's equivalent. That's basically what a personal assistant is. And like I say, that's not implying that there is a DDA breach or anything, but the fact that we're sort of in that field of saying, well, this person isn't just an extra friend that's going along. This is literally the thing I need to access this service you're providing. At least is putting us in a kind of, I feel like, an ethical kind of, this stinks a little bit. I think that kind of, even if it's legal, which it probably is, the fact that I can look at from my own experience and think, if that was my student I was supporting and they were saying you need to pay for your carer to come along with you, I would be like straight on the phone to someone to get advice on whether that's appropriate under DDA Section 3 and 5. And this is a very sensitive topic, and although we don't often give the club the right to respond on things, like whether we think they've hired a good manager or sacked them, it's probably something that we probably should reach out and sort of say, give them a chance to sort of say why they've come to this decision, rather than just sort of slag them off on here. It seems like it's a sensitive issue that they deserve some input on, and I'll let Finn talk about how because I know he's had these sort of experiences, both good and bad, at football grounds. But the fact that you're even sort of thinking, hang on a minute, that could actually be considered discriminatory potentially, is it shows that how many people, how many PAs actually go on the coaches, how much of a difference is it going to make? And if it's literally like we have to cover the cost of, say, 6 personal assistants, can that not be spread around the however many tickets that are going? Because that's you're trying to include as many people as you can, even as a gesture of token, like everyone else is going to have to pay an extra £1 per game, rather than forcing those who are already disenfranchised in life to basically pay double for their transport costs. Seems and I know some people will say, well, why should I have to pay? But it's like, but it's going back to the idea of there being some kind of community about the club. If you don't care, fair enough. But for many people, this is their family and their support network, and it's more than just sort of 3 p.m. on a Saturday. So just speaking personally from my own experience, I thought it seemed a little bit cruel is maybe a little bit extreme, but it seemed a little bit harsh of a measure to be taking that away from fans, especially the notice being given out on what's basically the eve of the season. I'll hand over to Finn now, but I definitely think that it's going to hurt some feelings. There'll be a lot of for people who already feel disenfranchised a lot of the time by the society they live in. I suspect there'll be a lot of people down in the mouth about that and feeling a little bit unwanted and unloved when they've read that announcement.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously, I don't want to sort of bang on about it, but I think it's an important point to raise. Like, everybody should be given an equal opportunity to do what they want to do in life, within reason, obviously. And going to a football match, I think it's a very reasonable request. It's what millions of people do week in, week out. And I think it's to put it, there's things called there's a payment that disabled people get called the disability living allowance, which is basically money from the government every month to deal with the extra costs that it takes to be disabled in terms of adjustments that might be needed. Going to a football match and having to take like an alternative route on a trip to a train station because the other train station's platform might not be accessible or out of order, or you name it, basically. And I think it says about cost of living on the statement, and whilst that's true and everybody else is feeling it, I think there's an argument to be said that disabled people are going to feel that cost of living just as much, if not maybe a little bit more. So to ask them to pay for something that is a requirement to just go and enjoy something that everybody else doesn't really sit right with me, and it's something that I feel quite passionate about outside of football. With myself being a wheelchair user, it's something that I experience on a day-to-day basis outside of everything that I do in life is usually I have to think about what I'm going to do. I can't just turn up to a football ground. I've got to at least a week or two in advance plan. Okay, say I want to go to Sheffield Wednesday on the start of the season. I have to say, okay, I need to go to Sheffield Wednesday in 2 weeks' time. So I need to check what accessible rooms are available, all of this kind of stuff. And now with this payment on the coach, for example, that's putting that might make it might not be that many people, but it's important, because there might be some people that feel like they can't go to football matches now, and that's that's not okay. And I understand, everything's in society and business it ultimately comes down to money, and I think the club has done some really, really, really good stuff with community initiatives such as Project 35. But for my reckoning, sort of equality and diversity and stuff like that, it doesn't mean sort of helping one set of people out and then sort of possibly giving, how do I put this? Giving money to sort of making other people pay for their requirements. So you can't give free, say, sanitary packs in the toilets, and then on one hand, and then because it's a requirement for some people, and then on the other hand, say you need to pay for your personal assistant because we can't afford it. For me, that's just not right. And I'm not clued up on the legal side of it as such, but I do feel this every day, so it does matter to me. And I just think it's important. It needs to be said, because although it's not a very nice subject to be talking about, if people don't talk about it, then no one will. So yeah, that's all I got to say, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Zach said it's something that should come up in the fans forum on Thursday. Hopefully, if I believe Joe's going, if somebody there doesn't, I'm going to pre-submit it as a question anyway, but I feel like it's something that will be mentioned. Yeah. And also, as we said, sorry, there's a ridiculous comment. And then, as we said, we will message the club as well to see, to get their view on it if it's not mentioned the fans forum on Thursday. To round this off then, just like Joe did, so you've already done this, Ben, but Sam, I want to hear, short and sweet, your league winners.
I've probably changed my mind already, to be honest.
Well, yeah, you can't change it within an hour. You can change it within a couple of days. I want your Championship League winners, runners up. Just give me one team that you think are going to make the playoffs that might surprise everybody, and then your 3 relegated sides, please.
Okay, I'm going to say all this is the caveat that I am not, with having been to Turkey and then obviously been to Spain with your good self, Aaron, and a busy few weeks, a lot of work, and I'm not maybe as clued up on all the ingoings and outgoings as I maybe normally am. So what I'm saying here is I do reserve the right to change these predictions. Top 2. I think Leeds will get it done this year. I just think they'll be a bit more consistent. I think they're clearly looking to bring some more players in, and they were very close last year. So I think Leeds will just get over the line. I think club to come up with them, probably Burnley in truth. Scott Parker, I don't think is exactly a brilliant manager, but he, kind of what I said about Maresca at Leicester this time a year ago, he doesn't have to be brilliant because the squad is so good. He just has to be competent at getting them over the line. And I think he will do that just because he did it at Fulham, he did it at Bournemouth. He is effectively 2 out of 2 for promotions with a squad of that strength. Maybe there'll be more competitive sides around and he won't quite get it done, but I'm thinking Leeds and Burnley. Team that's going to surprise everyone and make the playoffs, who we don't necessarily all think will. I'm not going to be popular. I think it might be Stoke. I think Schumacher is just that good of a manager. Yes, it took him a bit of time to get them going, but when he got them going at the end of the season, they were having against us. They were we were rubbish, but they were so good against us that day. They won, I think, 4-1 on the final day as well. I think he's just gradually getting that shoey ball implemented. And when you look at what a magnificent job he did with Argyle, his track record in football in his very limited career so far is great. They've kept all of their best players from last season. They've brought a few decent-looking signings in. I think Stoke will be the team to be in the promotion race who aren't necessarily expected to be.
When Stoke and a promotion race comes calling, you don't say no, Sam.
Yeah, I think they'll come fourth. Maybe one other would be Norwich, because I think they underperformed last season with how many good players they've got. And I think Forup seems to be a good appointment, did very, very well in the Danish league. As we've seen with Cifuentes, managers can come over from that league and travel well. I think he'll be another one. So I think Stoke and Norwich will be up there contending as well.
I was waiting for you to finish talking to say you were in Turkey when you should have been in Torquay, but you took forever and the moment went. But I've said it anyway because Aaron's disappeared and I'm wondering if he needs someone to fill while he's refreshing or whatever he's doing. Oh, he is. There you got an extra.
Yeah, I have absolutely no idea what Sam just said because my internet fully
did one.
Just went. So yeah, so I have no idea what Sam just said.
Time because he bets he thinks Stoke might get promoted. So
Okay, that's nice. Go on, Finn, give us yours. So league winner, who gets in the autos? One team that could make the...
I didn't do relegated. Oxford, Blackburn, and okay. Sorry, do I continue or yeah? Oxford, Blackburn, and I'm struggling with the final one. I'm struggling.
Derby, I would say.
I'll go with them as well. I'll go with them as my placeholder, subject to change. Yeah.
Yeah. So promoted. Leeds, probably, to be honest. If they don't get promoted this season, it will be a disgrace with the quality that they've got. And Fark would need to be called out on that, I think, because I see a popular podcast suggest have a grid of managers that they brought out, and Daniel Fark was something like 4th in terms of managers that they would have at their clubs. But I look at Leeds last season, and yes, they were competing with a very good Leicester side, but and Southampton were decent. But I genuinely think what they did last season was a failure, really. So I'd say them to get promoted. And I'm going to say, let's go with. Let's go with Burnley, because I don't know why. I just feel like they're just one of those teams that just will somehow, and they might not deserve it, but yeah, they might just do it because they're Burnley. They're used to doing it, and then
just sheer weight of quality, winning in spite of Scott Parker,
yeah, exactly what Scott Parker has done at Fulham. And done at Bournemouth. I don't rate him as a manager. I probably actually like him less. This is quite a statement by myself, but I'd like him at the club less than Wayne Rooney. If you should just Wayne Rooney before he came in, genuinely, because I think that just the things that he's complained about when he was at Bournemouth, not having enough money, and then Gary O'Neill came in and took them to mid-table. It's just rubbish. So Burnley and Leeds. Quite boring for that. Playoff winners. We are doing playoff winners, right?
Yeah, go on.
Playoff winners. I'm going to go with. I think Cardiff will get to the playoffs this season. Don't know why. Don't think they're going to win it. I'm going to go with. Don't know. To be fair, my mind's gone blank.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm going
to. Who are you 3 to go down?
Oh, okay. Argyle, Oxford, Derby. I've just good Argyle for the reasons that I've mentioned. Oxford because I think they're even weaker than when we came up, and I think they've got probably a little bit less of a budget than we came up as well. They're run. To be fair to Des Buckingham, I was kind of laughing at him at the start, and he seemed quite a bit of a sort of out there appointment and wasn't doing too well. But he really, his team came together in the last couple of months, and they took momentum into the playoffs and deservedly won that playoff final. But I just think it's going to be a bit too much for them. And in Derby, just because I don't think Paul Warne is a bad manager as such, but I also think that he's failed to deceive in the Championship whenever he has, because yes, Rotherham will always be up against it when they come to the Championship. However, you can't tell me that he had a harder job with the foundations that they would have had from recently being in the Championship when they came back up, because they're a bit of a yo-yo club, that he had a harder job than somebody like Stephen Schumacher taking Argyle into the Championship. So I think those three, those choices might be a bit basic, but having said that, I don't know. I feel like this Championship this season feels like a bit more of a traditional Championship in terms of like the teams that you have in it, and I feel like it will play out a bit more like a traditional season. Although I hope that Sam's prediction does come true, and we're the surprise team that finishes about 15th, and everyone predicts us to go down.
Aaron, you still with us?
I'm not sure. He
Possibly.
is.
It sounds like he's moving his furniture around. I think from that noise.
Having a crisis.
I'll have to take over the impromptu. What haven't we covered? We've done the coach situation. We've done the teams around the league. We've done how Argyle are doing. Predicted player of the season for Argyle, anyone? I'm going to say it'll be Michael Cooper. Bear in mind, I've got no agenda here, by the way. I'm just completely freestyling this. I'm going to say Michael Cooper, because I think he will still be with us. And I think even if he does leave on a free, he'll earn us enough points that will be looked back on as an understandable decision. So Michael Cooper, player of the season.
I would love to see Ibi Sissoko do everything that we talked about him doing in the first half of in the previous pod, if you're listening on audio. He really does have the potential, to my eye, to be, special and better than Argyle, especially our current position. So he could be, again, a bit like some of the other players we've talked about who've come on loan, someone like a Finn Azaz, someone like a Morgan Whittaker, someone we think, wow, it's great to have him at Argyle. I'd love to, if he stays for the whole season and he reaches his potential, he could very, very easily be clear, like Whittaker was last season, a clear player of the season. But he's going to have hopefully a lot of competition from players like Morgan Whittaker himself, and hopefully, like you say, Cooper, Gibson. Someone who I don't think is underrated, but certainly being centre back isn't the Hollywood position. Maybe doesn't get the love that maybe he should. An absolute rock for us last season. Let's go with Sissoko, just because we all love a tricky winger, don't we?
Yeah, I'm very, very, very much looking forward to Whittaker and Sissoko on the wings. But barring a transfer for Whittaker, but that's looking less and less likely. It's going to be, if it goes as we hope, it will be better than Kerry and Ramirez, because Whittaker is a better footballer than Graham Carey was, and Graham Carey was majestic for us, and at a lower level, yes. But I'm, like I said with Rooney, the positives are just he seems to be building a team on vibes, and that's the way that I like to see football played sometimes. So it's very much going back to what Ben was saying about Sam's sort of analogy of sometimes it's better your team playing good football and losing more than winning a bit more and sort of being very boring. And I feel like that's what we're going to see. So I think let's just go Sissoko. Yeah, it's just I don't know. It just seems the kind of signing we would have made in about 2008. Didn't we get a rubbish player from PSG once?
We had Larry Mabila. We don't know if he was rubbish or not. He never played because of an injury. He signed for us and never appeared in a matchday squad.
But is that kind of signing
memory working as well as ever?
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. Is that kind of signing you make when you can only sort of make when you're in the Championship, and it has that kind of vibes about it. And in terms of, I'm not really. I know he was injured and stuff, but I'm not really sure by the looks of what everything about Toulouse fans say, and about him on Twitter that I've seen, and just what clips that I've seen from him so far, why they've let him go. But I'm happy with it. So yeah, let's just go him and see what happens.
Absolutely. I heard none of that, and I don't know if anybody else has got anything to add on whatever that subject was.
I want to add a bit of Sam Down trivia if we can for the audience. So I was trying to remember the last time I went to Plainmoor, which was only once, and I literally had to sort of sit down and work it out. It was, Sam, it was the season we won Division 3. I didn't know any of this because I couldn't remember. I had to look it up by process of elimination. It was the season we won Division 3. It was in September. I know we won. I knew we won. I couldn't even remember who had scored or what the scoreline was. Do you remember?
301-0. 301-0.
Oh, why did I even think he wouldn't?
50 something minute. 50 something minute.
Yeah.
58, I want to say.
Sounds about right. Yeah, I don't even remember the goal. I remember we won, but yeah, absolutely belting. Well done, mate.
Yeah. No worries.
Too easy. Too easy.
Pleasure to test my mind.
It is now 10:15. As I said, having internet issues, no idea what most of you said in most of that hour of content. So I look forward to editing it and finding out. But I think we'll call that a night unless anybody's got anything they really want to add.
Just thank you for sticking with us through our technical difficulties. We'll try and have it a bit more back to the slick operation you're used to next time. And you might be able to hear me a bit better as well if I can get my normal mic to work.
I'm not sure anybody is used to a slick operation when it comes to the Green and White podcast brought to you by Argyle Life. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It helps get the pod into the eyeballs and eardrums of everybody that needs to hear it. Do they need to hear it? Don't know. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. And if you're not listening to us on an audio platform, make sure you go and subscribe on Apple Pods, Spotify, YouTube Music now. And if you're
we also have a Substack, don't we, Aaron?
Well, yeah, the pod doesn't, but Argyle Life do. So go and follow us on Substack as well for all your written Argyle content. I think we'll call that a night. Love you, bye.
Cheers.